Ketchikan City Council order, please call the roll.
Harris.
Present.
Carlson.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Severson.
Here.
West.
Here.
Thingy.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. Thank you, everybody. That brings us down to communications, and we have budget updates 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. When we start into the general government budget, let's take care of these ones that need motions, that people want to make motions on. Then we can get back into CP, or capital projects, and then move into KPU's budget. Persons to be heard. Dick, come on up. Mr. Allen.
Mayor, council members, my name is Dick Allen. I live at 411 Mission Street, and make this quite fast. Selecting a council member tonight, and I have found Dick Coos in the past to be one of the hardest working and doing his homework when it comes to the agendas within the city. And personally, I think if he has any kind of a personal agenda, it's strictly for the betterment of the community. And I would strongly recommend that you go with Dick Coos tonight. Thank you much.
Thanks, Dick. Chuck Slagle.
Chuck Slagle, number 3 Salmon Landing. Thanks for taking time. I think I told you last time I wouldn't be back, but
Welcome back.
anyway, and I am only speaking for myself. In fact, a lot of folks tell me I don't need to bite the hand that feeds me, or I could stir in the pot, but that's apparently not my style. So I'll be out of here in just a couple of minutes. I think, and obviously the bone that's in my mouth is this rain gauge thing. And I think there was a mistake made, and I'd just like to get that on the table in case you want to contemplate the particular type of skills you're looking for in your next council member. I think that we have a problem where we are more than prepared to disenfranchise the citizens of this town. And I think that, Bob, I think you could have done what you did much better or in a different way. And I say this respectfully, we've been friends for years, but when you went around and were really pushing for this rain gauge to be brought forward and put to bed, championing the cause that the money should be spent elsewhere, that's what you're supposed to do. That's a tough job, and I sure as hell don't want it. Saying it's an RFP thing, I'm a little less supportive on that, because that came up after the mission to stop this thing had already started down the tracks. But more importantly, I think your job as a city councilman and working theoretically for the citizens of this town, it should have been that as you went out and championed this cause, it should have been one, hey, I think this money should have been spent elsewhere because our town's fallen down around our ears or whatever reason, that they didn't stick with it, and whether it's a red herring or not, that there's an RFP issue. But more importantly, what should have been added to that was this is a community effort. This was a group of people that was asked by the city to do something, asked by the city. And they did it to the best efforts. They did it following state guidelines and following the guidelines that were in place for the last art projects that were there. What should have been added to that effort was these folks are key citizens of this town. They're actually doing something on our behalf, and they need to feel respected and not disenfranchised at the end of this. And that didn't happen. And I talked to you before the whole thing came to a head and said, whatever you do, I don't care where you vote, and I'm in this because I think it's an organization that needs supported. I said, don't fool with the process. Somehow you have to keep this group of people motivated to continue to doing what they're doing, and that didn't happen. And to me, that's a failure of leadership. That should have been attached to the whole effort. You should have lost sleep over how do I stop this and still keep this group of citizens motivated, and I don't think that happened. And I think it permeates, I don't understand. The city, I come in here about once a year with some mission or some gosh darn thing I get excited about. And there's some things I get excited about. First City Players, our local fishermen, the community band, there's some folks that are just silent producers of goodwill in this town, and I think the Arts Council is one of them. But one of the things that just irked me to no end, and it to me is somewhere, somebody should be in trouble for it. You guys should be in trouble, or Carl. I don't know if Carl gets in trouble, but maybe he should be in trouble. But certainly Steve Corporon and Dave Timmerman. If you followed this, I don't know if anybody looked at the Facebook. During this whole process, Dave Timmerman had an ongoing discussion on his Facebook page, which is open to the world. These two young ladies in Holland that put effort into this. One of the things he said is, hey, what do you guys think of the rain gauge? They should have spread it around town. Well, maybe I shouldn't expect them to spread around town. In other words, he started off with kind of a negative tint, and he works for you guys. He was actually asked to be on the selection committee if she declined. So I don't understand the rules and regulations, but when you work for the city and then you ask somebody to do something for you, to turn around and actually work in a negative way, I think it's wrong. So in the course of these 95, 100 comments that are on the Facebook, he points out that maybe if we were in Amsterdam, it could be a bomb. This is a guy that works for you, and theoretically works for the organizations that's putting that $100,000 out. Further on, he says, well, 25 turds, it's just one of them is still a turd. That's not the type of, I mean, you didn't see that coming out from the arts side. You didn't see that kind of negative, just mean stuff coming. And the thing that really irks me is Steve Corporon, who works for you and runs the Port Authority, took great pleasure wandering around, even with the Arts Council then this, and I have lots of sources for this. He takes great pleasure in saying that at his organization, in his office, that they had a poll or a pool going on whether this thing looks more like a meth lab or a bong. Now this is somebody that works for you. If I had an employee that said that about the cruise ships in public, I would fire them. You can't do that because it's the tip of the iceberg. What it is talk about disenfranchising. I mean, what you did was, you should have been not so heavy-handed, in my opinion. But what they did was inexcusable. You guys asked a group of valuable people to do you a favor and go out and do this. And then at the end, when you didn't like the choice they made, instead of leaving them feeling respected, you turn around and cut them off at the knees. And then you wonder why we get a 15% turnout at a bond measure or something. You guys have a higher calling. You have to do the tough things. And at the end of it, somebody has to say, we work for the citizens, not just do we do the best job for them, but we can't cut them off at the knees. Somebody makes a good effort, which they did, and having one of your, and you guys know if you heard about it, I'm sure some of you were even part of the process of laughing about it. It's not right. It shouldn't have come down that way. And what that happens, it just disenfranchises people to an extreme level. What do you think the chances are of getting anybody that was involved in on this side, and all they did wrong was choose wrong maybe, and come about it with passion? What did you expect from somebody? You asked them to do a job, and they came back at passionately? Oops, they did exactly what you told them to do. And then to have one of your organizations turn around and treat them like that, anyway, I don't think it's a good idea. I think it took more than 5 minutes, but when you put somebody else in that chair, we should be, it isn't just about dollars and cents. At the very end of this, it's not going to be about whether we have $100 million in docks. It's going to be about what kid learned to play in the community band or got to involved in a piece of artwork with Ray Troll. There's more to this town than goddamn docks. And when you turn around and are willing, all I see is the tip of the iceberg. All I saw was on Facebook and heard Steve Corporon doing that. You have a higher, who the hell do you think you work for? Excuse me, but anyway, I'm done. I'm getting excited. Anybody have any questions, obviously?
Any questions?
Yeah,
Bob?
I appreciate you coming up. And I never considered the cost. I wasn't concerned about the funding source. And I didn't speak to whether I liked or disliked the art. The fact is the city of Ketchikan has a responsibility to manage your RFPs. I appreciate everything the Art Council did. That's why I didn't go after and talk anything bad about the Arts Council, because I don't want to do that. But the fact is the city has a number of RFPs. I'm working on one for the hospital right now, millions of dollars. When you send an RFP out, it sets the level playing field and the standards that the contractors or the proposers bid to. And when you color outside lines and go outside of that, that's how the city council got involved. If it had come back to us and it fell within that RFP, I don't think this council would have had a problem. But it did. That's the only thing I say. But
Well, and I appreciate that,
Yeah,
Bob.
and-
I'm just saying that my point is attached to the effort should have been a distinct effort not to disenfranchise that group that was trying to do something for you. That's it.
appreciate that.
Thanks, Chuck. Next, Len Lawrence.
Len Lawrence, 5716 South Tongass. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. You all remember running for council, figuring what to spend on advertising, writing radio and newspaper ads, positioning yourself to interact with the public, participating in public candidate forums, making or buying yard signs, knocking on doors to introduce yourself and ask for votes, rain or shine, wave to motorists at busy intersections, and filing those required Alaska Public Officers Commission reports. And that's for starters. Just one of the 5 candidates before you tonight have experienced a city council election, something that they will have an opportunity to do next October. In the meantime, I urge you to vote for the candidate with a proven track record, Dick Coos, to fill the council vacancy created by the resignation of Sam Bergeron. In his time on the council, Dick dedicated himself to listening to the public, studying the issues, and respecting other council members. When a council seat has become vacant previously, the body has often favored the next highest vote getter from the prior election. Please extend this courtesy to Dick Coos. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. Any questions for Len? Thank you. Glenn Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Glenn Thompson, 626 Sunset Drive. Once again, I come before you as an individual citizen and not as a representative of the Ketchikan Gateway Borough. I think that my message last week with regards to a request that you reconsider an increase in the sales tax may have gotten a little bit muddled with the controversy that was generated by the rain gauge. And so I wanted to reiterate this evening that I have several reasons why I think that that should be the last thing that you consider on your agenda in terms of raising the sales tax rate. There are alternatives, and we can take a look at exemptions, not to pick on the mayor, but one of the exemptions in the current sales tax code is newspapers. I have no idea why it's in there, but it is. There's other exemptions in there that we could take a look at as well. There's a possibility of increasing the tax limit on sales taxes from our current $1,000 cap to a $5,000 cap that Juneau has, or the $2,000 that the Borough Assembly has passed. There is some concern that if we did that it could have an effect on low-income taxpayers in terms of rent. So you could raise it on everything except for rent. So there are alternatives. One of the other alternatives when you're looking at cutting a budget is what I refer to as the 95% rule. And what that does is that says you do a 95% approved budget of this current year's appropriations, and from there you increase by a positive affirmative vote any increases that are necessary. I fully understand that you can't do 95% of a bond payment or of a fixed income item. Those are pretty easy to justify. But in some of the other areas in your budget, you might have there might be some difference at this table over what makes sense in terms of a tightened budget. In closing, I think in terms of the salaries, I did hear that you don't want to look anybody in the eye right before Christmas and say I'm cutting your job. Fully understand that. There are ways to control your labor budget as well. You can do it through attrition. You can set a salary cap that the manager can work within, and those types of things. So in closing, please consider a blend of revenue increases and cost cuts as you consider your deliberation, because I do believe that sales taxes are probably the last thing you want to do because they do have unintended consequences and could be diminishing returns. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Bob?
Glenn, I talked to a couple of retailers today and yesterday, and I was somewhat surprised that they didn't have a problem with the sales tax, and actually they were more in favor of Matt's idea of doing a seasonal sales tax. But they saw that the raising the tax limit is just an invitation to shop down south. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, I think raising the sales tax rate is an invitation to go down south. I think people do it already. One of the things you might notice is that our sales tax is currently at 6% and Juneau's is at 5%. The people on the cruise ships know that. If they're going to buy a T-shirt here or a T-shirt there, you know, or even a larger item, they're going to shop in Juneau because it's cheaper. They know that. So anytime you raise the sales taxes, there's a chance you're going to push business down south. It's simple leakage. And so I don't necessarily agree with that. One of the things I noticed this morning was on the Ketchikan Daily News, they have a poll as to whether or not people are in favor of a sales tax increase, and 80% or 83% of the people at the time I looked at it were against any kind of an increase in the sales taxes. So they do have unintended consequences. You know, one of the other things is that the local vendors who support our arts and our kids and everything else, they're either going to have to pass that along to their customers, which means everybody's going to pay more, or they're going to wind up eating that cost. If you take an increase in the tax limit, probably the biggest area that it's going to affect in single unit purchases is going to be rent. And if somebody's rent's going to get passed along to them, the question you should ask yourself is, would you rather have a 0.5% increase in taxes on everything you purchase, or a small increase in only on your rent, which is the worst of two options as a taxpayer? And I would submit to you that having an increase in the sales tax only on your rent would be much preferable to rent, food, fuel, and everything else you buy in town.
Any more questions for Glenn? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Rhonda, Mrs. Bowling.
Hello, Rhonda Bowling, 5878 South Tongass, and I'm speaking on a personal nature, not in my position as Civic Center Manager. Last year, on Christmas Eve, with 2 days' notice, about 689 of us circled the hospital, hand in hand, linked up around the entire exterior perimeter of the hospital. It went so well, and the outcome was so amazing that the hospital approved it to be an annual event for our community. So that's pretty exciting, and that's why I was coming to you tonight, is we are going to do it again on December 24th at 12:30 is when we gather in the helipad, and then we start circling the hospital about 12:40, start singing Silent Night at 12:45, and be done by 1. I do have a video that I'd like to share with you. I've shared it with some of you, but I will send it to your email so you can kind of see an announcement of what last year's was like, and I will be meeting with the hospital tomorrow at noon to just kind of finalize some details. I just wanted to let you know that. And on another note, I just wanted to publicly thank the KTB for a great Nutcracker this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Question?
You're going to do this to midnight? What we're looking at? This day or night?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Noon hour.
Okay, there you
12:30
go.
p.m. Thank
I
you.
want to make sure that when the people are showing up.
Thank you very much. Noon hour. Thank you.
All righty. That's the last one on the list. Is there anybody else here who wants to address the council tonight?
Trevor Shaw, 10649 Poff Road. Although I am a member of the Ketchikan Gateway Borough Board of Education, I am here speaking on my own personal behalf as a private citizen. First of all, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, I would like to recommend that the City Council appoint Dick Coos to fill the vacancy on the council. His experience previously serving as a council member will gratefully benefit the council in resolving some of the current issues at hand. And the situation at hand that I believe being the most important is the current financial state of the city, which is the next topic that I would like to address. Let me be blunt. The council has made some irresponsible decisions when it comes to the fiscal management of the city. Many of you say that you are opposed to increasing taxes, but then you vote to increase the taxes anyways. Many of you are saying you're willing to make the tough decisions to cut spending, but then you don't do it. The city, like many other governmental bodies, has a spending problem, not a revenue problem. One of the big things that concerns me is the council has looked at revenue increases before it looked at spending cuts. I don't want anybody to go home without a job. Let me make that perfectly clear. But there needs to be a balance between revenue increases and spending cuts. You can't have one without the other if you're going to solve the financial problems. A seasonal sales tax might be the way to go. I don't know. It's a tough decision to make. I understand that. So the choice has to be made, and it's unfortunate that drastic cuts may have to be made. However, it's the consequence of sometimes having a almost uncontrollable and overly inflated budget. The people of this community are the voters that elected you into office, and they are not an at-will resource that is to be utilized to raise revenue when the going gets tough. As elected officials, you have to make decisions that are sometimes very hard, and I can sympathize with you on that. However, this is not an issue to be taken lightly, and I believe it takes large amounts of time and effort to come to a unified decision that best benefits everyone. So I only ask that you remember that during your deliberations. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, sir. All right, anybody else who wants to address the council? Seeing none, I'll bring us into our business. I was hoping if council had no problem, we could move item 6A1, consideration of the filling of the council seat, as the first item, which anybody have a problem with that? Shall it be done? Okay. The process, and Katie, if you can make sure, is we have all 5 candidates can come up to the podium, and I'll call one at a time. State why they want to be on the city council. Council members can ask you questions. After that time, council will make a motion for a person, and we'll start voting and see what happens. All right. Terrell Retke, come on up.
Hello, I'm Ty Retke. I reside at 744 Water. I'm 28, and I've lived in Ketchikan for roughly 75% of my life. I've been involved in a lot of nonprofit activity in the town. I've worked for the city both in the ports and harbor on the docks, and currently I am employed at the police department as a temporary dispatcher. I was asked by several people to put my name in the hat for this, and I decided that it was time for me to kind of put up or shut up whenever I'm talking about politics, so I decided to go ahead and put my name in the hat. I consider myself to be a fiscal conservative person, and I am willing and ready to serve.
Great. Any questions? Yeah, Bob.
So as you've heard, we have less revenue, higher costs, failing infrastructure, and more work. What do we do?
I think the thing that we need to do as a city is the same thing that a person in a similar situation would be in. We need to cut our spending. I think that's the primary, as this gentleman said, we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. And I think that's the same in all governments see that. And I don't know the specific areas that we would be looking at cutting. I haven't had a chance to review the very specific items on the budget, but I would be looking very hard at where to cut things and where to lower spending before we raise and taxes and fees and things like that where necessary.
Go ahead, Bob.
What is your, in your opinion, what is a need as compared to a want?
I think the needs for a city, for a government such as this, start with the essential services. Obviously, I work at the police department, so I know the importance and the need for having EMS personnel and these kind of services. Services like the water infrastructure, the power infrastructure, the telecommunications infrastructure are obviously extremely important things that we utilize as a city and need. For this community, the docks, they're kind of a double-edged sword. They are a need because most of our revenue is derived from the tourism. But on the same note, as Mr. Slagle had put, the docks are also kind of a pariah in some instances. So infrastructure items are definitely needs. Wants are things like expenditures such as a lot of the projects I've seen go up lately. The library was, in my opinion, a want. It was a very nice thing to have for this community, but it seems to me that it was much larger than we needed, and we now look at having to cut positions or ask for more money from the borough because we cannot fund it properly. Other wants are, I'm sure, on the agenda in the form of wanting to keep all these employees that we have. It's not necessarily something that we can do. It's a hard thing to do, but it might come down to having to cut people's jobs.
Anybody else? Matt?
Thanks for applying. Really appreciate it. One of my concerns on your application is that it says you've worked for Parks and Harbors and Police Station. Specifically with the police station, we have a council member and a mayor who have direct ties to the police department. Do you have any ties that would preclude you from voting or making a decision in an unbiased manner?
I actually have put a letter of conditional resignation into my employer. If I am elected, or if I am selected, I would immediately resign. My only other conflict is I have a brother-in-law that works at the city dump. Other than that, I don't think that having worked in these places gives me a bias towards them. I think it gives me an insight into the operations of those facilities and those departments.
Any other questions? Bob?
Yeah. What do you feel the prime purpose of city government is?
The prime purpose of the city council, do you mean the city council or the city government?
City government.
The city government is in place to provide the services and organization of the city, the things that the people themselves can't organize. Things like building roads, providing police protection, building large infrastructure projects.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Mickey Robbins. Mickey, come on up.
Mr. Mayor and council members, my name is Dale Robbins, commonly known as Mickey, and I live at 3710A Hillside Road. I've lived there now for 41 years, and 64 years in southeast Alaska. I'm retired now from the Department of Transportation Public Facilities, where I worked for 32 years as a project engineer in the construction field. And after retirement, I went into fishing charter business and worked at that for 10 years. The paper, some or other, didn't get that I had retired from that too. And we had a bed and breakfast for about 5 years. I'm currently on the Ports and Harbors Advisory Board as vice chairman. I've been on there for about 12 years, I think. I can't even remember when I got on it.
Long time.
Lou was on it. But anyway, and I now have the time and the wish to serve on the council. I don't have a personal agenda to bring up at the time. Anyways, so I just thank you.
Questions for Mickey?
Mickey, I'm going to probably do the same one, so it's kind of fair across the board. And the first one is less revenues, higher costs, failing infrastructure, more work. And what do you think we can do?
Well, you do have deferred maintenance on a lot of different projects around town because you don't have the money to do it. We've got to raise the, revenue somehow and repair these, streets and some of the water and sewer lines that are failing. I know right in front of my house, the water line broke. And when, they got up there and fixed that right away, which was good. I know when it was put in, it was the year after I bought the house. It's hard to look back and say, well, I know they just put it in there, but it was actually 40 years ago. As to how you raise the revenues, it's either got to be in property taxes or a 0.5% increase in sales tax, or cut the services somehow. And right now, I'm not in a position to, make that decision.
Continue, Bob.
What is your definition of a need as compared to a want?
Well, you need the infrastructure. Some of the projects I think we've had in the past year, they seem to, we need the library, we needed the hospital, we need this, but sometimes I think it's just, we go a little more first cabin than what we really need to. But these are needs, but I think our wants are sometimes just a little more extravagant than what a building would, could house.
And I think the other question I asked here is, what do you feel the prime purpose of the city government is?
Providing the infrastructure to maintain the infrastructure and also keep the public safe, both with fire and police.
Anybody else have a question for Nikki? All right, thanks, man. Next, we have Jackie Mack.
Good evening, Jackie Mack, 909 Jackson Street. I thought that this would be perhaps a good opportunity to see if I could contribute something more to my community. That's the purpose why I'm here.
All right. Bob, you want to do your question?
Sure, and thank you, Jackie. So again, we have less revenues, we have higher costs, things have gone up over the past years, the failing infrastructure, and we have more work ahead of us because of that. So what do we do? What in your mind?
I'm a businessman, so you either have to, raise costs or lower expenses. That's, the same for any government, the same for any business. It's the same thing. So simply have to look at it and see if there's places that we can cut or places that we can increase the revenue.
And the other one I had here is, what do you see as the difference, or in your opinion, between needs and wants?
Well, I could relate it to, I need a shower, but I'm practical, so, needs are things that you need. We need the infrastructure of the government to help the community continue to survive. And wants are things that make it look pretty. And in a sense, sometimes those things too attract industry, like in the tourism, but we have to look closely at how we do those things and how much we spend on them. And I think, as Mickey said, sometimes we dress them up a little too much, where we could go a little more functional.
So what do you feel our prime purpose is as city government?
For the people. You're here for the people. You're welcome. Thank you.
Deanne? Oh, don't run away, Jackie. Deanne has a question.
I was just wondering, in terms of the time commitment that is required, I know you own a business and run that here locally. Do you feel that you have extra time, adequate time? Because honestly, I was amazed and a little overwhelmed, always overwhelmed, by the amount of research and data and reading and just, it's like studying for, tests all over. again
Exactly, yeah.
every other week.
It's one of the things that I took a look at. If you'd have asked me that 10 years ago, I probably would have said it would be a squeeze. But I'm trying to, move a little bit more to less work time. I'm trying to work smarter, how's that? And give myself a little more personal time and do that. And as a lot of you probably know, I'm on the Planning Commission, so I'm kind of used to doing homework and things like that. Yes, I think I could have plenty of time to contribute.
Any other questions for Jackie? Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Next, Dick Coos.
And Mr. Mayor and council members, seems kind of funny standing out here on this side of this microphone, but anyway, I put back in to be on the council again, and as all of you know, I've been on the council for 6 years, 2 terms. The main reason was I've always looked out for the community, and I think being on the council and watching what the government does for the people, sometimes to the people, is a good way to provide back for community service. I do have the time. I'm retired, and I can go over my history, but I think everybody sitting here probably knows pretty much my history except for maybe Judy. And I'm just here to serve the public and try to keep the local government working in an efficient manner.
All right. Bob, you want to start with yours?
Yes. Thank you, Dick. Less revenues, higher costs, failing infrastructure, more work. What do we do?
Less expenditures and more revenue. No, it's a delicate balance right now. There probably is going to need to be some more revenue, whether it's a tax increase, services increases. We've increased services costs of water and sewer for the past few years. Maybe even electrical increases we get to it. But as in one of Carl's memos, and I think it was last January when we were talking about, maybe it was temporary sales tax for seasonal that Matt brought up, he said we need to control our expenditures. And I think that is the first thing we need to do, is look at controlling the expenditures and looking at the budget. And I've been here for the 2 budget meetings. I'm having a tough time. It's a good budget, but I'm having a tough time seeing where we've really controlled some significant expenditures. I think there's opportunities before we jump in to, say, raising either sales or property tax.
So what is your opinion of the difference between needs and wants?
If I could give you an example, we needed a new library and we needed a new fire station. But I think we had a want that was bigger than our income, because in my opinion, and all of you knew when I was sat here and I argued with it, I think the fire station and the library are both larger than what we need, and probably have some gold plating to them. And so it's like I like to have a car. I need a car, but I like to have a Cadillac, but I can't afford a Cadillac.
And then what do you feel the prime purpose of the city government is?
It's to keep the infrastructures that the citizens need in the town, sewer, road, water, the police and fire protection, and manage those and give policy direction keep it going in an efficient manner that people can afford and are willing to expend for.
Anybody else have a question for Dick? Thanks, Dick.
Thank you.
And our final candidate, Russell Woodhouse.
Honorable Mayor Williams and members of the City Council. First of all, I'd like to voice my thanks in your consideration of filling the seat vacated by Sam Bergeron. Councilman Bergeron, I'd love the opportunity to represent the good people of Ketchikan. Some of you might know me as a musician, as a graphic artist, and others might know me as a shipping/sample guy at Salmon, etc. But above all, and in the end, I'm a fellow Ketchikanite. I have friends and colleagues all over town and from every walk of life, and I'm not here to represent any group or niche, and I'm hoping, if appointed, to offer a voice of common sense, to ask tough questions, and to weigh without any predisposition the myriad of difficulties that face this body, such as the budget shortfall, the challenges with infrastructure, including bridges, resurfacing, storm drains, power production and maintenance. I would love to be a part of overcoming these issues that we face and to be a part of planning the bright future that Ketchikan deserves. And I thank you for your consideration.
Bob? Thank you, Russell. You went into it a little bit, but we do have less revenues and higher costs and failing infrastructure and a lot more work ahead of us. Do you have any ideas? What do we do?
You know, having watched the last few meetings over the last week or so, you know, some of the proposed things like that Councilman Olson offered, the seasonal tax, I think it's, again, a balance between looking at, you know, I've been hearing and looking over the budget, and there's not a lot of waste that I've noticed, and it's, I think it's a balance of tightening our belt and looking at those things, and the possibilities of raising other. I mean, we need to raise revenues. Period. It's been a while since we've done those things, and it's something we need to look at. But I think it's a balanced approach, obviously.
And the other one was, what's the difference between needs and wants in your opinion?
I think we inherently all know what needs or wants are. Maybe not. I mean, maybe that's. Sometimes we find ourselves in those positions. But needs are things that we can't live without. Things that we're obligated to, that we've already committed to. And wants are some of those things that it would be nice if we could do this, or it would be nice if we could provide this. And I think those are some of the challenges facing us right now is looking at what wants are and distinguishing what those are and comparing them to the needs and making some tough choices.
And then my last question is, what do you feel the prime purpose of the city government is?
Again, I think we're all on board with the same idea that it's providing the infrastructure and the primary needs that the city needs, that the citizens need. And what was that?
What are the prime purposes of the city government?
So, providing the infrastructure, again, the safety of the citizens, the police, fire, water, just, you know, getting down to the nuts and bolts and basics and making sure that those things are taken care of in the best ability that we can with what we have at our disposal.
All right. Anybody else have something for Russell? Seeing none? Thank you, Russell.
Thank you very much.
All right. That is all the people that have signed up, and not everybody. I mean, we're going to select one, but I really encourage, and I did this the last time, for you to sign up and when it comes to October and look at a future doing at least getting some people on the ballot. We had some good people last time, and I never saw them again.
Your Honor?
Can I have a motion? I guess I can be finished.
I'll jump right in. I move that we appoint Russell Woodhouse to the vacancy on the City Council.
Do we have a second? Moved in second. Marty?
I've known Russell for a long time. I think he's fair and he'll do the work. He'll give everybody a fair shake. He's smart. He listens, and I don't think he makes his mind up before he does the research on an issue.
Anybody else? Yes.
I too have known Russ for a number of years, and when he says he knows people across the community, he knows people across the community. He seems to fit in well across the all the different groups, social aspects, and I think he would be a good representative on this board.
Judy?
I concur with both Marty and Matt. I know Russell personally. He seems pretty level-headed, and I think he'd do a good job.
Anybody else before we call the roll? Call the roll.
West?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Carlson? No. Harris?
Yes.
Severson?
No.
Zingy?
Yes.
All right, that passes 4-2. Russell's the new council person. I want to thank everybody else that's applying, and it's an interesting job, and I really hope we keep getting the interest. Madam Clerk, how do you want to do that? Do you want to swear him in now, or?
Yes, if you'd like him to sit at the table, I need to swear him in, and I also we need to take 5 minutes so I can give him an introduction to the.
You bet.
But we can swear him in if you want now.
Okay, let's swear him in, take 5 minutes. Russell, can you pop up here?
Stand in the podium. Okay, we need to have you raise your right hand. Do you, Russell Wodehouse, solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution and the laws of the state of Alaska, and the charter and ordinances of the city of Ketchikan, that you will perform the duties of council member of the city of Ketchikan, Alaska, upon which you are about to enter, honestly, faithfully, and impartially, and will do even and exact justice to all persons to the best of your ability?
I will.
Okay, and you can sign it if you would. And if we got a short break.
We'll take a break, and she's going to have to give up her.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
And take his tie off.
Sit in the chair. You're on.
Some of the rest of us up.
We can blame the new guy.
At the top of the agenda, we're at 5A, Resolution 132530, Draft 2014 General Government Annual Budget. We deferred it from the 3rd. I think we got all the way until, we're in the CIP, capital improvements. A lot of that was already in each department, but back here in CIP, you can go through each project or each department, starting with I. If you want to look there. Russell, I was just getting on board, if you feel uncomfortable and don't.
Yeah, you want to take care of that?
That's right. Russell, if you don't feel comfortable with the topic or a thing that's on the thing to be voted on, don't worry about tonight abstaining, otherwise join in.
Thank you.
That brings us to budget update number 7, adding BH North Water service connection.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I move the City Council approve the addition of the Bar Harbor North Replacement Water Service Connection Project for the amount of $25,000 of the Harbor Department's 2014 capital budget.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Anybody want to talk about it? Seeing none, call the roll.
Hold on.
All right.
Okay. Honestly, I can't do anything. I know, isn't that weird?
Uh-oh. You want to turn it off and turn it on?
I've tried. Tried doing it.
Wow.
I know, I've never had it freeze up on me.
I'm in the same room.
Russell gets in here and.
I know, look at
It all
that.
goes.
That's your electric personality.
Won't turn off at all?
No. I can't even see the whole wall.
That's going to end the whole meeting.
Okay.
Turn off, we can't even get to the Bluetooth. Can you turn off your keyboard?
So the off-on switch doesn't even work?
I know.
Okay.
Yeah. We're going to do it the
Okay.
old-fashioned way.
All right.
You want to use mine?
Huh?
Use
I
mine?
don't think it'll make any difference, because you don't have a roll call either.
No.
Okay, I'll call the roll though.
Okay, call the roll on update number 7, Bar
Okay.
Harbor North.
Severson.
Yes.
Woodhouse.
Abstain.
Zingy. Harris.
Aye.
Olson.
Yes.
Carlson.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Okay, that passes 6 to 1 abstention. All right, that brings us to budget 8. Number 8, update number 8, decrease the library UAS contractual service, motion required. Somebody got a motion? Budget update number
You're
8,
on.
go ahead.
I move the City Council approve a $25,000 decrease to the Library Department's UAS Division Government Contractual Services account number 635.01, and a $33,000 decrease in the Library Service Fund charges for service revenues.
Moved and seconded. Marty, you want to add anything?
No, Your Honor.
Anybody else?
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
So why is this going down?
Result of discussion with the university and the school district. When the library director put her initial draft budget together, she charged a portion of her salary against those two accounts. That was done outside the scope of the agreement and wasn't appropriate. And I believe there was some additional accounting relative to how the collections are tracked. Both of those led to the reductions.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Call the roll.
West.
Yes.
Carlson.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Harris.
Aye.
Zingy. Yes. Woodhouse.
Yes.
Severson.
Yes.
No, passes 7 to nothing. It seems like it's been a long time since we had 7. All right. Budget update number 9 is just a fund balance policy update. Budget update number 10, museum tour guides, CPV funds, motion required. Do you have a motion?
Your Honor, I move the City Council amend the 2014 budget by increasing the transfer from the Port Enterprise Fund to the General Fund by $54,535 for the purpose of funding the temporary tour guide employed by the museum department from CPB funds.
Bob, do you want to add anything?
No, I just think it's a great idea.
Anybody else? Call the roll.
Hold on, I'm almost up.
Oh, all right.
Almost up. Weird, huh? Harris.
Aye.
Zingy. Aye. Severson.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Carlson.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Woodhouse.
Yes.
Okay, that passes 7-0. That brings us budget update number 11 is just a revenue and appropriations summary. Revision 2, budget update 12, workforce and succession planning. Budget 13, legal cost review of CPV usage. Do we have a motion on 13?
Will the City Council amend the 2014 budget by increasing the Port Department's legal and accounting services account number 640-01 for the purpose of engaging outside legal counsel to review the appropriate uses of the city's commercial passenger vessel tax revenues.
Second.
Within second. Matt, do you want to add anything?
I actually do, because now all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank. Carl, I have a quick question. We're not engaging anybody in order to use just the wharfage fees and all that, the other port revenues, are we?
No, this would be with the intent of looking at CPV funds and what is and what isn't an appropriate use of those funds.
Yes.
I would like to amend my motion to include port, is it the landing fees that generate the most of port landing fees as well?
Do we have a second for the amendment?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay, so you want this outfit to look at how do we legally can use port dockage fees?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Everybody understands that? Call the roll
On the amendment.
on the amendment.
Carlson.
Yes.
Harris.
Aye.
Olson.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Woodhouse.
Yes.
Severson.
Yes.
Zingy. Yes.
Okay, the amendment passes. Anybody have anything on the motion? Go ahead, Marty.
I don't mean this to sound facetious, but can we use the CPV taxes to pay for the water?
He'll tell us.
I think I'd like to talk to the city attorney about that.
Okay, it's worth a shot. Thank you.
And Carl, are you going to put out requests for proposals from outfits? Are you guys going to talk to certain outfits?
I'm going to have to discuss that with Mitch after the first of the year.
I'd be curious to see who the city of Juneau got involved with it, or if they did.
We definitely.
Not that I'm looking for a certain outcome, I'm just wondering that we look at more than, do something where we can get some good input.
We've had further discussions with Juneau, and I don't want to burst anybody's bubble here, but the extent of their funding is in large part due to the fact that they're consolidated. So they're paying for services that we don't offer. So we're not likely to get up to that 1.4 million. So
Understood. Call the roll.
Zingy. Yes. Woodhouse.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Harris.
Aye.
Severson.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Carlson.
Yes.
Okay, main motion passes, 7-0. All right, budget update number 15, changes to mayor, council, and clerk budgets, incorrect key errors. Do you have a motion?
John?
Go ahead.
I move the City Council approve changes to the 2014 general government operating and capital budget by decreasing the mayor and council department's community promotional account number 61001 by $5,000, decreasing the city clerk's travel, training, and education account number 600.03 by $6,300, decreasing interdepartmental charges for various departments as outlined in the finance director's memorandum of December 5th, 2013 by $1,230, and decreasing interdepartmental revenues reflected in the general fund by $7,106.
Second.
All right. Do we have, do you want to speak to anything? Anybody else? Boy, with subtractions, we've already cut 65,000. Call the roll.
West.
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Woodhouse,
Yes.
Harris,
Aye.
Severson,
Yes.
Zinni.
All right, that passes 7-0. That took care of all the budget updates. And now it brings us to the CIP. That's where we left off in the city budget. Do we have anybody with questions on the CIP? We start at I. And it covers all the different departments. Where the money's coming from, general fund or public works or grants or other. And that starts on A1. I guess I'm looking wrong. I can't see what that is. I need my more powerful glasses. I apologize. So it's on A1 starts the list under the CIP. Any questions?
Your Honor, are you moving down to A2 on any?
You can go in any page you want.
Okay. On A2, we have, and we talked about this a little bit last year, under streets and sidewalks, there's a stairway reconstruction cost of $50,000. And I believe that in case we need to hire a contractor or something to work on some of our staircases. I'm not entirely sure. And where I'm going with this is it's kind of a placeholder, and there's going to be another one, as I talked to Carl earlier about, in the demolition of buildings. And we have no funds available for overlays. And I'm concerned that if we don't continue to work with that overlay project, that we're just going to fall farther and farther behind on this. I understand that we may have something to do with demolition of buildings in the future. I know the Knickerbocker is in real tough shape, but I think that Carl can come back to the council and respond under emergency orders to deal with that if we need to. I would hate to use placeholders and then not add any paving to our project. And I know there's another one in there of, like, I don't know what's left in it, 15,000 for the tree and stuff on 3rd Avenue. I think we can probably do some of the same stuff. But my intent is to maybe utilize those funds for the overlay. We have about $250,000 to do that, and I hope that we can find some more someplace. But that would be a start. So I guess I would move, and I'd like Cliff to be able to speak to it. I don't want to remove funds from him without having him a chance to talk about it. I respect what he's doing there and what we have potentials for.
Cliff.
Good evening. Cliff Allen, Public Works Director and City Engineer. I think at the last meeting I said something like, Matt, that's not fair. It is difficult to choose between CIPs when they all certainly have merit and need. I guess I could go either way. The placeholders are there for an obvious reason. When my first year or two took place here, we had nothing in place, and every time we had a rock slide, we were coming back for emergency funds. The downside is that every time we do transfer for an emergency, I believe it will automatically come out of reserves, and that's risky. That gets a little bit out of my department when we start to talk about the financing. But every 50 or 100,000, we will certainly make good use of. I'm not sure if we're being asked to pare this down and come back, or to make this decision right now.
I don't want to just make those assumptions and move those funds without some kind of thought about it. But presently, right now, they are placeholders. And if we can do it, I just soon give you some money to start planning on doing some overlays.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor, if the council's intent to shift that money over to overlays for next year, and I'm talking about the $200,000 for the demolition of dangerous buildings and the $50,000 for staircase reconstruction, if you're content to do that, knowing that sometime next year, we bring back something to you that says we want to move forward with taking down this building or rebuilding this staircase, there's no appropriation, and we're gonna have to take it out of reserves. We're good with that, but that's a policy call we're gonna have to make.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
And I don't know what we have on the plate for stairways this year, but I know that we have in-house crews that provide those, do that also, right?
That's correct. We have used this as a source of funding for the materials, which are a huge component of our stairways.
I guess that used to come out of maintenance materials, I guess with the new accounting system or something.
There's some variations to that. Agreed. Your Honor, if I may,
yes.
We've had some recent dialogue internally within the engineering department about some alternative approaches to the CIP for the Ketchikan Lakes Road concrete joint repair. Can I confirm with the manager that is that CIP still in place? That's $300,000.
Yeah.
We've had some proposals that have recently surfaced, and it's early in the game, but we have found some new products, some alternatives. It might even involve some equipment exchanges, and we think we can get that done for a substantially lower amount, perhaps $150,000. If it's an option, I will throw this out that we just change this title to citywide, use that as our overlay. That would at least give us 150 or more on overlays. It would preserve the placeholders, and it would allow us to further flesh out this option for the joint repair.
Yes.
I know that we have 200,000 in buildings, but I can't, by the stretch of imagination, think that building's going to come down to $200,000.
If you're only talking about that one building, I would be inclined to agree. I don't know yet. There are some other buildings that are close behind. They're not quite as visible, but there are more, I'm afraid to say.
Any other questions for Cliff?
I just have a question along those lines. How close are we coming to having to act on that building?
If the owner does not act, I see us acting within 2 or 3 months. We're seeing movement every time we look. We're getting reports of doors having to be adjusted on the refuse access next door. I can't predict it. I really can't, but it cannot go on unabated.
What did we hear from the owner since the last time we took a motion on his stuff?
We've heard more through his engineer and through some interested contractors. They've made a lot of calls and questions to us, but as of yet we've had no commitment and no direct contact, to my knowledge, from the actual owner.
But people have been talking on behalf of him?
Yes, we clearly got their attention with the action that was taken.
Right. We're talking about the old Knickerbocker. All right. Any other questions?
Well, I guess if you guys could come back for the budget update to shift some of those money around and see what we can do with that, I'd appreciate that, because I just think the overlays have worked. You guys have done a lot with the project that you've had with the limited amount of money you have, and I hate to see us lose momentum on that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right. Anything else under CIP for the city?
Your Honor.
Yes.
Salmon Row pedestrian improvements. I guess if we didn't have a tourist season, we would be doing this. That's mostly a pedestrian path for tourists, I believe, as they access the Heritage Center and that kind of stuff. Is this an option for CPB money?
Carl or Cliff?
If you bear with me just a minute, Mr. Mayor.
It's right under Ketchikan Lakes.
If I may, this one originated by direct request from the former operators of the hatchery. As such, the hatchery has since closed down, and in all honesty and humility, we missed this one when we were stripping items out. It would have gone to a lower priority.
Can you?
I think we can wrap that into your previous one, and we'll come back and
thank you.
Budget update.
Anything else?
Yes, Your Honor, if I may, just as Cliff's
Keep
up
going.
here, not too far away from us, we got a fairly detailed report here on some of the stormwater projects we're looking at. Are these all on public right-of-way? It's your best.
I think I'll need Mr. Brackey to back me up on that one, because I don't think they are. But he will certainly have more detailed knowledge than I on that.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Seth Brackey, Assistant Public Works Director. So I believe the question was the stormwater projects, Hilltop, East Branch Hilltop, that list of CIPs. The question was if they're on or off right away or private property. So looking through the list, Hilltop, East Hilltop, West Hilltop, those have portions on and off. And those, so specifically that's behind the Best Western Landing. We had a presentation on those. We have a contract for design. So that's those three. Let's
The last council directive to us was to move forward with 100% design on the assumption that we were going to do the work. Ultimately, it would come back to council.
Yeah, my concerns here are we setting precedents as far as moving on to private property and doing work outside of the right-of-ways with tax dollars without any compensation from the adjacent or the owner of the property.
Again, this is just design work at this
This is
point.
just design.
It's being funded.
We're still looking at LID option.
Council hasn't given
I
direction.
thought we
for
gave
us.
direction, we talked about looking at that. Did we?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, something I'm thinking. Anything else for Seth? Thank you, sir. All right,
Your Honor,
go ahead, Matt.
since we were talking about the old hatchery, Cliff, sorry to ask, the old hatchery building, what's the current state of that, and what are we looking at having to do, or unless I missed it in here somewhere?
The Sarah board, my understanding is, are going to be meeting in early January relative to bringing forward a proposal to us. They are interested in the property, but there's certain things I think they're going to ask for our help with relative to getting the site in an area that's usable for them. That might include the removal of one of the buildings.
Just one?
Yes. It's the old Raptor Center. And we have not definitively nailed down a funding source, but the derelict building was one that was on my mind.
Okay. Thank you. Bob?
Under the solid waste capital project, there's the oil centrifuge installation. We talked about buying one to hopefully produce fuels that we can use within our own facilities. And I'm sure that you got a plan of where that's going to go into the building and all that kind of stuff. But as that project moves forward, I think it would be appropriate if we looked at a way to compensate the landfill crew for the work that they're going to have to do to maintain that and to run it in order to produce those fuels. And it may be attached to a cost per gallon, and it's going to be much cheaper than heating oil. But I'm just thinking that it's a great idea to go ahead with that. I think we can be a good resource for us on the island here, since there's nothing right now that we can do that with. But I think there is going to be a cost associated with operating it and maintaining it. Oil's nasty stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that'll shake out in the overall cost benefit of this. And I'm sure you're familiar, Councilman Severson, that we historically paid to get rid of the waste oil.
I know.
And every gallon of that we can burn internally immediately is credited to our savings. So I think that'll be a fairly easy one to shake out.
I just think that as we move forward with that, we take a look at that and keep track of our costs so we know exactly what it takes to do that.
Anything else for Cliff? Thanks, Cliff.
Thank you.
Carl, the only question I had was under the Ports and Harbor with our waterfront promenade, or public art. Oh, we're on A10. I guess, aren't those the ones we put the CP or CPV funds about last budget time or something? Or when we took the time to figure out what we wanted to do with it. I can't remember when we did that last.
We did, the rain gauge construction was being funded for 2014. And these were the same ones that we budgeted last year for the updating of the wayfinding, the timber and wood products interpretive exhibit.
But this is the money that we received last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, we just rebudgeted because none of those projects were carried through.
And then when we do these, are they, how are you going, like the stamp mill and the timber and wood stuff? What's the process going to be? Is it going to be like we did before with just the rain gauge, or is it going to be something different, or is this take a
No, it won't. It will not.
consultant
It will not be the process that was used for the rain gauge. I think in most of these, we're looking at contracts with Historic Ketchikan to do.
And then now this next year, we're planning on we're estimating another 2.1 for the CPV.
That's
Okay,
correct.
and then this year we're shooting it for that construction down there by our Salvation Army. Is that the?
I'll know more hopefully by the middle of next week. We're supposed to have some more refined cost numbers back from P&D in terms of interim repairs and then permanent options to fix that wall.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Your Honor, in regards to the totals on these year-by-year capital projects, we lumped everything into 2014 to bring that total to $93 million. Understanding that the hospital, Water Street Trestle, Float 9, and N1 and First 4 represent $87 million of that. Is that going to be spread over a 3-year period, and shouldn't we look at that to see what the capital responsibilities are in 15 and 16 also?
I'm going to defer to the finance director. Normally, we would encumber it in the year in which the contract was let.
Yes, this schedule is based on when we actually award the contract and encumber the funds. It's not based on when we actually spend the money. So what you're talking about would be appropriate if we were trying to track it by when the money is actually spent.
So if you utilize those numbers, it looks like our capital projects for 2014 are like 5.7 million. Is all we're looking at compared to the other 18 and 25 and stuff. So I didn't know if there was a way that we can level that out a little better or not. That's okay. Thank you.
Anything else on the CIP?
Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
I had a question about a hole in the wall.
Ask it.
This is probably for Steve.
Come on up, Steve.
I agree that this needs replacement. My concern is funding. I know we've been very fortunate to get funds to help us with others. Are we looking at having to absorb the entire cost of this project? I mean, or are we going to be able to get some out of some other? Because this is one of those that we took over from the state, correct?
Port and Harbors Director Steve Corporon. Yes, sir. This facility is the poster child for the 50/50 Harbor Grant program. I am 99.9% sure that I can get a 50/50 Harbor Grant probably the first time out of the box, if not the second time out of the box. It'll be a Tier 1. It'll be at the top of the list. My hope was that we could get a Denali grant of about $1 million. They like to fund construction grants up to $1 million. Denali just isn't getting any traction right now. They're kind of battling for their life up there. We had Denali Commission Denali Commission staff was here 2 months ago, escorting an inspector general team coming through that was looking at there. But we made sure they saw all the projects we have done with Denali grants in town and prospective ones, and we started with hole in the wall. I took them down there. I made them walk down that access ramp and showed them that this was a very, very viable project for something for the Denali Fund. So if they get funding, and we're lucky enough to get a grant, we could get this one fully funded, because it's roughly a $2 million project. So I get $1 million and $1 million. If we just get the 50/50 harbor grant, then we're going to need about $1 million, which means basically a 7% rate increase across the board to cover this project.
What have we been getting? Is Denali what we've been getting from at a fishing game, or fish? Is it?
No, that's separate. And Fish and Game's actually been running point on those grants for us, and that's the one. Those are 75-25, 75 federal, and then 25 local. That's how we've paid for the Knutson Cove launch ramp project. That's how we paid for the Bar Harbor launch ramp project. Our goal is in about 4, maybe 5 years, take another turn and looking for Mountain Point. And what we have done, we're getting $300,000 from the state to take over Mountain Point, which is what you guys approved earlier this year. My plan is to kind of, for all intents and purposes, escrow that $300,000. That's probably going to be about a $1.3 million project, so that we don't have to come up with any more local funding when it comes time to do Mountain Point in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I fully support that, because I did not agree with taking the state harbors over with so little funds to replace them. So thank you.
Yeah, I would love to get another grant for Hole in the Wall. Denali was 3 years ago when was the one I was kind of banking on, but then, well, the earmark became a bad word, and Denali is really, their funding's really dried up. But there's hope. You never know.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Anything else?
Your Honor?
Yes.
Under information technology, I see that we have some work to do on the AS400. And is all that funding coming out of the general fund for that project?
Councilmember Stevenson, no, it's being split 50-50 between general government and KPU, and general government portion is coming from the Public Works Sales Tax Fund.
Are you talking about the AS400 upgrade?
Yes.
Because it's for $80,000 in our general fund here.
Oh, excuse me, are you talking about the IT project?
Information.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, that's coming out of the general fund. I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about the accounting system.
Well, the majority of that, I mean, a big portion of that AS400 is telephone billing, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Why aren't they paying a portion?
But I don't want to speak for the information technology director, but yes, the billing system is definitely a part of it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that if one of the reasons we kept it around, and Curtis, you can kind of tell me about what the use of that machine is right now, or that particular item.
Curtis Thomas, Information Technology Director. That system was used for a series of different systems, including the accounting system. Still has parking, utility billing, mostly the telephone system. We've got the police RMS system is still on there. We're going to migrate that next year. And the parking system, we're looking at migrating off onto the Cardinal system that the police department purchased last year. And at that point, it'll become pretty much a telephone billing server. It's going to be long in the tooth at that point and ready for upgrade. It is even today, but we've been postponing it. So I think telephone will probably have the argument that it should be maybe upgraded before they take it over. That's a conversation we'll have a couple years from now.
Well, my concerns is probably the most benefit and the most use out of it through the telephone, so I don't think all the funding for that, the $80,000, should come out of general fund. You're saying that a portion of it is coming out of KPU? No.
Yeah, a good share of that cost is being recovered through interdepartmental charges, and I believe KPU is paying for 56% of the IT budget, so they're paying for 56% of that cost.
Okay, I couldn't see it here, and I was wondering. Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you. Any other questions?
Down here to
How are you looking, Bob? Carl, I have a question on the hospital sales tax fund. As I look at your new update, we're looking at 4.8 at the end of next year. What's the, I know we pay some stuff out of it. We're going to have more than what we take out of it. Is there any specific things you're looking at that we need to fund from that in getting started in this construction? I'm just curious. I have no idea what's the plan of attack there.
Talking about the
hospital
total reserves
yeah.
that we're projecting.
Yeah.
Just what's budgeted under public health.
And the debt.
And you're looking at a sizable construction project, and you know how the unknowns are, so we were trying to keep that fund as healthy as we could as a hedge against the unknowns with the hospital.
And the other thing,
So you're
too,
just using it as a construction reserve, or I'm just curious about the.
sure. There's one other thing we want to use it for, too. We're going to be using the hospital sales tax to provide for the debt service. And when we get ready to issue the bonds, I want to be able to demonstrate to the bond bank that we have a sufficient reserve on hand to account for any possible fluctuations in sales tax revenue going forward. So having that $4.8 million will be a plus when they're considering
When do you expect
bond
to sell the bonds?
April or May of next
So
year.
what would our first payment be?
First payment will most likely be sometime in October. It'll be an interest-only payment.
Yeah, is that 1.5 or is it be a little
Right,
less?
yeah.
That's just curious.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Welcome.
Any other CIP? Going once?
Your Honor,
Matt?
I had questions about berth 4.
Question away.
Just the general aspect of us renting the berth and paying for improvements there. You guys all know I don't enjoy that contract. And I'm just curious about the nature of our putting the improvements into berth 4 or making alterations to it in terms of what happens at the end of the contract.
It's a question I raised with the Port and Harbors Director, and I'll let Steve respond.
Port and Harbors Director Steve Corporon. What was the specific question?
The two berth 4 transfer bridge modifications and tender flood extension. We're not the owner of the property, we're just merely using it, but yet we're making improvements into the structure. What happens at the end of the agreement with the improvements, since we're making these, my brain isn't working in accounting right now, in accounting language, but we're making these improvements, and how does that affect the property when it comes to the end of the contract life that we have?
The replacing the switchgear on the capstans is something that is probably going to be done several times before the end of the lease. I just saw it more as a cost of doing business. The covered walkway one, that wasn't even for this year, I don't think, was it?
I think he wants to know if we own it after we're done.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that was an out year.
If we're going to continue to improve this place, and at the same time we're turning around and paying all the extra expenses that we're paying, and also issuing out $1.8 million in rent a year, I guess it comes around to me that shouldn't the owner of the property be taking care of some of the infrastructure?
We can certainly make that request, and I would suspect that Survey Point Holdings' response to that will be probably to approach the borough, as it has done for other projects done on for berth 4, to seek public funding from the borough CPV funds for those types of improvements. But we certainly can do that. This isn't cut in stone.
No, I guess I just, again, I have a problem with the contract, and I've been pretty, I guess, vocal about it at times, and so I think I'd like us to pull those items. At least that's my general feeling right now. Maybe I'll just wait and hold out for a adjustment or a motion, but.
So you'd be talking about CIP priorities 2, 11, and 10 and 11?
Yes.
We'll all own it at the end. We all own it at the end. Gives 25 years.
In 10 and 11, I wouldn't have any problems with pulling those or delaying those. Those are probably good arguments to see if the owners could make those improvements. The electrical upgrades to the capstans, that's what we're looking at to do this year, and that's more, if one of the light fixtures blows out, it's on us to replace it. So I see that as pretty much just more of an expensive light fixture. These things keep blowing. They need to be replaced. They weren't in stainless boxes when they put them up. They were in painted steel boxes. We want to put stainless boxes up and get them so that, because when they blow, if they've got the parts here, and they don't always have them because they're not standard, this was something that they got somewhere else, it can be a week or two of having that capstan down. It means the longshoremen are pulling these lines hand over hand, maybe 200-300 feet.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Anything on CIP? Seeing none?
One more quick one. Sorry, Your Honor. Is Alan here?
Cliff's still around.
No.
Alan. Oh, sorry, Alan.
The question is about the cars, the 90,000, is that enough to fund your replacement? They've been coming in cheaper, right?
First of all, Alan Bengard, Chief of Police, and yes, 90,000 is more than adequate for the 2 replacement marked vehicles.
How much were they coming in?
On the state contract, the vehicles themselves were just shy of 30,000 with shipping, but then the outfitting on top of that, $10,000, $12,000 a vehicle.
And those cars working well for you?
They were working outstanding.
Thanks, Alan. Anybody else? We'll close this.
One last thing, please.
You bet.
It's just a general discussion. I just want to bring it up again. We have museum facilities replacement scheduled for 2015, and we are pushing off a discussion about it. So this isn't anything for staff. This is just something that we need to, as a council, as I look at the CIP, we need to start moving forward and make a decision on what we're going to do with that.
We heard you. All right. Any other we're gonna, if you have nothing else on CIP, we're going to turn the page on the city budget until we get through the get through the KPU budget. Once we're done with the KPU budget, you can, if you have changes or things you want to do with the city budget or the KPU budget, it'll be open either at, depends on how fast we get through the KPU one, at that, a special meeting, or when we adopt them on the final meeting in December. Everything, if you have things you want to amend or do, it's open at that time. I'll bring up the sales tax structuring. I have a different idea on how we can structure that, but I'll bring that up when we get through KPU, but nothing major. All right.
Your Honor.
Yes.
Before we move out of the general government portion
You bet.
of stuff, there were some questions brought to the podium about some of our accounts or funds, different things, and it was responded to in the update number 14, and for our new council member, Woodhouse. Carl, could you kind of brief that for me, please? If you have a copy.
I can do that, Mr. Mayor. There was some discussion about it tonight relative to the council candidate. discussions. And, I think we set it out fairly clearly in terms of the budget we presented. Personally, I don't think we have an expenditure problem. I think we have a revenue problem. We have a revenue problem because we've financed two major bond issues, and we shifted a significant amount of revenue from the general fund over to the Harbors Department. At the December 3rd budget deliberation session, Mr. Painter addressed the council and was critical of the 1.5% increase in the general fund sales tax that had been proposed by Mr. Newell and I for dedication to the library. We also talked a little bit about the lack of competitive bidding regarding the deployment of KPU's latest 4G LTE wireless service, the construction of the microwave circuit to Prince Rupert. He was also critical of the amount of the city's current cumulative reserves, and then he made some comments about the compensation of my position. So I responded, and that's what you have in budget update number 14, and I'll just hit the highlights real carefully. Between 1990 and 2013, the city's mill levy has increased only twice, and its current combined sales tax of 3.5% has not increased during that same time period. During the same interval, the borough tax levy has increased on 5 separate occasions, and its sales tax has increased twice. As I commented, it appears that Mr. Painter is trying to hold the city council to a higher standard than the borough assembly. Regarding the 4G LTE wireless service and construction of the microwave circuit to Prince Rupert, back on February 7th, the council adopted 2 ordinances exempting both of those initiatives from competitive bidding, and it did so due to the nature of the beast. We had to be compatible with Verizon's equipment in order to do the wireless. In case of the microwave circuit to Prince Rupert, there were other issues that again made it necessary for us to procure the equipment from a company called NEC, and those reports are available if anybody wants to look at them. Regarding the City of Ketchikan cumulative reserves, I laid out a table listing those reserves as of December 31st, 2012. And then there was an accompanying document from the finance director with an explanation of what those reserves are. And my only point here is council is aware many of those reserves are considered proprietary. For instance, the KPU Enterprise Fund reserves cannot be used to bail out general government, and many of the other reserves, such as the port and others, again, can't be used to balance the general fund. And having proprietary funds like that is common among any municipal government, in that you can't combine all your pots of money and then just start dealing them out in the way you might fancy. And then the last comment I made in my report just goes back to the consolidation of general government and KPU management. Prior to 1999, the city management team was comprised of the city manager, the assistant city manager, an administrative assistant. At that time, KPU management was comprised of the general manager, an administrative manager, a power projects manager, and an executive an executive secretary. So in 1999, you had 7 people running both sides of the government. Today, you have 3 people doing the job of those 7 people. So I just wanted to get that on the record.
Thank you, Carl. If there's nothing else on the city, instead of starting KPU tonight, I think we'll just wait until Wednesday. I think we can get it done in the night. I'm optimistic. Okay. I have a couple questions, but I think we can buzz through. That brings us down to Did we have anything else on that agenda? I bring. No. Okay. Okay, now, do we need to make a motion to defer? Okay. And do we have a motion to defer the budget till Wednesday?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call the roll.
Harris? Thingy? Severson?
Yes.
West?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Woodhouse?
Yes.
All right, I put my agenda away. If somebody has, do we have council member comments on this? Okay. KJ, have anything?
No, sir.
Bob?
I woke up this morning at about 5:20 and turned on my faucet, and I didn't have any water pressure. At that time, of course, I informed Bailey that there was an issue, and they said they were aware, and Mr. Klaniger could probably give you an update, or Carl can on that, but our crews have been working diligently, and they have the water back on. We had a pipe rupture on Baranoff and dumped 350,000 gallons of water or something, John, is that about right? And it was well planned, in simple fact that it was right adjacent to a creek and didn't go through anybody's property. But they're still up there, I imagine now, putting that road back together, and responded very well.
Great. Anything else, Bob?
Nope.
Marty?
I appreciate that there was so much interest in filling the vacancy on the city council, and I'm glad that Mr. Woodhouse is here.
Matt?
Yeah, I too appreciate all the people who put their name in. It was very nice to see that, and welcome Russ. And I had a comment. Oh yeah. Debate tournament and drama tournament this weekend. If you're interested, again, there. I know they're looking for judges or timers, or you can just go for the finals, which is around 6 o'clock on Saturday, and it's a lot of fun. And one more, I'm having a little bit of heartburn over funding the library with the entire sales tax.
That's my heartburn too. We'll bring it up.
Yeah, so I just wanted to put that in.
Matt, is there a class on judging being given at the high school for the drama? Is that right?
They just threw me in there.
They just throw you in there. No, they'll give you a quick little rundown, but it's
very subjective.
Subjective, and you get to see a lot of very. If you're doing debate, it's usually very intelligent arguments on either side, and if you're seeing drama, it's a lot of drama. And some comedy, but it's a lot of fun.
Deanne? He's last.
Oh, I just wanted to let you know I will be out of town Wednesday.
We'll do it without you. We'll miss you. Judy?
I just want to welcome Russell, and I'm really glad we had a lot of people stepped up and were interested this time. So I think it's a good thing for us.
And Russell, your first comments. The city councilman of Ketchikan, City of Ketchikan.
Well, thank you for this opportunity, and Deanna, safe travels. Sweet. And then who do you contact to?
Oh, I'm sorry. Contact Dan Ortez at the high school or Lee Woodward.
And again, thank you, and to everybody who also ran, who applied. I thought there were a lot of great candidates, a lot of really well-qualified people, and people who made some very smart comments, and I hope that they continue to come and give us input as well.
Excellent. All right, we'll meet again on Wednesday. I thank everybody that was a part of the process here, and it's nice to have 7 members. So, everybody have a great evening. Adjourned. Without a motion.